Journalist Raoul Duke and his attorney Dr. Gonzo head out on a substance-fueled road trip in Las Vegas to cover a motorcycle race, where they find themselves going through many psychedelic misadventures in early 1970s Vegas in order to search for the American dream at a time of the Vietnam War and the hangover disillusionment of the promise of the 1960s counterculture. Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas was released in 1998, and initially people didn't really know what to make of it. The whole entire movie feels like a garish, uncomfortable, mind-bending drug trip, which increasingly descends into madness, often feeling disorientating and even otherworldly. Yep, this movie isn't so much a movie as it is a very weird but compelling experience. Just be prepared for 2 hours following our main characters who are high as balls. So come on board this savage journey to the heart of the American dream. Ha! That's the movie's tagline, as we explore 10 things that you didn't know about Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, which is one trippy movie. So it's time to tune in, freak out, get beaten. That's another one of the movie's taglines. Also, do you love how I dressed up as Hunter S. Thompson for this episode? Yeah, you see, I have the hat and the aviators, and I'm bald. Totally accurate cosplay. So let's get weird and look out for those damn bats as we check it out. Buy a ticket, take a ride. Yep, you guessed it. That was another one of the movie's taglines. Hey, I'm just full of taglines today. It's just one of those movie tagline kind of days. Everyone has them. Number 10. It all started with a motorcycle race. Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas is the autobiographical story of journalist and author Hunter S. Thompson, a man described as having a love of drugs, alcohol, and firearms. And he was a journalist not afraid to get out there and experience what he writes about, and to get his hands dirty. For example, in 1965, he wrote a book called Hell's Angels, The Strange and Terrible Saga of the Outlaw Motorcycle Gangs, where he actually spent a great deal of time with the Hell's Angels gang, to the point where he was drinking with them and riding with them, and as CourseHero.com puts it, even witnessed them committing several crimes, and that he only left the group once they got sick of him and beat him up. Okay. Now after this, in 1971, Thompson was sent to Las Vegas to report on a motorcycle race for Sports Illustrated. And what started off as what was meant to be a simple report on a motorcycle race descended into psychedelic chaos, where he would get up to all sorts of misadventures in Las Vegas. The article evolved into the book Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, which was written with his unique style of gonzo journalism, with Thompson taking the guise of pseudonym Raoul Duke. If, like me, you don't know what gonzo journalism is, it's telling a real story, but from a first-person narrative, from the writer's point of view with their thoughts and feelings and experiences on the issue, rather than straight-up reporting. The name Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas came from Thompson's own paranoia of living in a post-JFK assassination world and the chaotic nature of his drug-fueled trip to Vegas. Number 9. There were many attempts to make a movie about Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Once the book Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas was published, Hollywood was watching and eager to adapt the surreal book onto the big screen. Its production actually started in 1976, and over the years both Martin Scorsese and Oliver Stone would try to get the production off the ground but were unsuccessful, as well as several actors being considered to play the lead role of Raoul Duke, including Jack Nicholson, Marlon Brando, and even both Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi in a dual role, but the project just couldn't get off the ground. The closest thing to a movie adaptation was a 1980 movie called Where the Buffalo Roam, which starred Bill Murray as Thompson. But the movie was a complete box office dud, and was more or less loathed, no pun intended, by the critics, and worse yet, very quickly forgotten about. Number 8. Hunter S. Thompson cast Johnny Depp himself. Production company Rhino Films, which is a subsidiary of a record label called Rhino Records, then took charge of the Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas production, where things finally started to move forward for a Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas movie. Now, apparently Woody Harrelson was very nearly cast as Duke, but he dropped out to star in the movie Palmetto instead. That's where we get to Johnny Depp, known for excelling in non-conventional movie roles and managing to really add an eccentric, oddball flair to the characters that he plays, while also making them very relatable. He met up with Thompson, and in their meeting, Thompson knew that this was the perfect guy to play his alter ego of Raoul Duke. In fact, legend has it Thompson said that no one else but Depp could play him, so Depp was cast. Likewise, Benicio del Toro was then cast as Duke's inebriated accomplice, Dr. Gonzo, a character based on Thompson's real-life friend, Oscar Zeta Acosta, who, by the way, mysteriously went missing in 1974, never to be seen again. Number 7. Fear and Loathing for a director. The next big challenge facing the production was finding the right director for the movie. The original choice to direct was once Were Warriors director Lee Tamahori, but he was unavailable for the studio's deadline to start filming. Depp lobbied for Whitnale and I director Bruce Robinson to direct, but he too was unavailable. Then Sid and Nancy director Alex Cox was hired as director, and he wrote an early draft of the script along with writer Todd Davies. But then Cox left the production due to creative differences with Thompson. Enter Terry Gilliam. Like Thompson himself, Gilliam also has a unique and visionary career that goes back to the 60s. He was part of Monty Python's Flying Circus, namely creating the surreal animation in the show, and afterwards would direct several popular movies, including Time Bandits, Brazil, The Fisher King, and 12 Monkeys. And apparently in the early 90s, even Gilliam himself had looked into making a movie adaptation of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, but at that time chose to focus on the as-mentioned Fisher King instead. With it feeling that he would add a unique visual flair, Gilliam was hired as director. Number 6. However, the studio weren't convinced with Gilliam. So yeah, remember how I said a company called Rhino was overseeing the production? They weren't entirely convinced with the hiring of Gilliam, as according to Wikipedia, he kept asking for an extension to start filming. And this apparently happened several times, and even Thompson himself was getting trepidatious over the extended time Gilliam kept asking for, and was concerned that Gilliam was just trying to put off making the movie. Gilliam was eventually given extensions by Thompson, but on the condition that he must direct the movie. Rhino then started to toy with the idea of firing Gilliam and bringing Alex Cox back in as director, as well as firing Johnny Depp and Benicio del Toro. I guess they just weren't happy with the direction things were going in. Universal Pictures then got involved in the movie's distribution, of which they had a big say in the movie's trajectory, where they reinstated Gilliam as director, as well as bringing back Johnny Depp and Benicio del Toro. However, Gilliam's position in the movie was still not locked in with Rhino. Like, it wasn't exactly officially set in stone yet. So Depp and Gilliam had Rhino banned from the set during the filming. And incidentally, Gilliam and British scriptwriter Tony Grisoni would rewrite the script for Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas in a back-breaking speed of just 10 days. Number 5. Depp lived with Thompson in order to prepare for the role. To get themselves ready for the parts, both Johnny Depp and Benicio del Toro would go all out to transform into their characters. Del Toro gained more than 45 pounds by eating 16 donuts a day. That'll do it. And Depp moved into the basement in Hunter S. Thompson's home so he could study him and his manuscripts and notebooks. And the two actually sparked up a real-life friendship and got along really well. They became lifelong buddies. In fact, it was Thompson who shaved off the top part of Johnny Depp's head in order to make him look authentic to how he looked, which, funny enough, Thompson did in his own kitchen. As it happens, Depp would spend 4 months living with Thompson, and the clothes we see Depp wear in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas were Thompson's very own clothes from that era, plucked straight out of Thompson's wardrobe, as well as driving Thompson's actual red convertible in the movie. Incidentally, both Depp and Del Toro were paid only $500,000 each for their performances in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Number 4, the studio wanted to make the movie contemporary. Now, at some stage in the early production, the powers that be got the idea of setting Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas in current day, late 1990s, as a way to update the story for modern times. Terry Gilliam was strongly against this, feeling like it would be like apologizing for the book, and he didn't want to apologize, feeling that the book was an artifact of a particular time and place, as well as the people involved. That, and Gilliam wanted to be true to the book. He felt that if it was set in the 90s, it'll just be about 2 guys heading out into Vegas to get wasted. And yes, I agree. If the story is set in the 90s, then it's basically Beavis and Butthead. But by keeping it in its intended time period of the early 70s, it becomes something both timeless and historical. Gilliam also felt that by basing it in the early 70s during the Vietnam War, at a time of perceived loss of the American dream, it adds more rhyme and reason to the nature of Duke and Gonzo. And once again, I agree. I feel like the time the movie is set is intricate to the story of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. It's intertwined with it. That and a great deal of the story is about the decline of the 1960s counterculture. I honestly don't know how you can tell this story without setting it in the early 70s. Plus, I feel like the movie perfectly captures the garishness and sleaze and artificiality of early 1970s Las Vegas, which to me just adds to its nightmarish surrealism. Number 3, filming chaos. The shoot for Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas has been described as being rushed and intense. Filmed on a very tight schedule, it had to be shot quickly on a continuous deadline. The production was originally given 44 days to complete the shoot, but in actual fact it took Gilliam 55 days to shoot. And in those 55 days there was a lot of pressure to get it completed. And what made things worse was the production seemed to be really disorganized. Gilliam would say that there was no set budget when filming had started, with all sorts of strange things going on during the shoot, which he described as being like one leg being shorter than the other. Hunter S. Thompson has a cameo in the movie, in the scene in the Matrix Club. Gilliam would describe him as a pain in the ass when filming his scene, with him refusing to sit down in his designated spot and throwing bread rolls at the crew, and generally just being a nuisance. In order to get Thompson to sit down and behave, they had to sit a pretty lady next to him. The production wanted to film inside an actual casino, of which they could only film between 2 AM and 6 AM, and were only given 6 tables to use for filming, and all the extras were required to gamble for real. The crew had spent 3 hot weeks filming in the desert. However, when it came time to do more filming in the final week of shooting the film, the landscape had completely changed, thanks to rain, with the scenery now covered in green vegetation. In order to create the sandstorm, the production used a jet engine mounted on a truck. Well, this created a high heat environment, as well as damaging a heap of equipment, and led to the cast and crew to require medical equipment to help them breathe. Oh jeez. And just when things couldn't get any worse, Tobey Maguire, who plays the hitchhiker at the start of the movie, shaved his head in order to give the character his balding appearance. However, he had to come back to do additional filming, but at that stage he grew his hair back, and due to Maguire's contract, in order to shave his head again, it would have cost the production a further $15,000. So to save money, the crew just stuck a bald cap on him. But apparently when observing the footage on film, you could still see his hairline, of which his hairline would have to be digitally removed in post, which ended up costing well over $15,000. They were better off just paying Maguire to shave it again. Yeah, just when you think the production of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas had seen it all and that things couldn't get any worse, along comes Tobey Maguire and his crappy bald cap to really throw a spanner into the works. Good one, Maguire. Number 2, Fear and Loathing's fearful reception. Originally, Terry Gilliam and Tony Grisoni were denied writers' credit for the movie by the Writers Guild, as it was felt that their script was too similar to the movie's first script, which was written by Alex Cox and Todd Davies, on the grounds that their script was too similar. Well, yeah, it was similar because both scripts were based on the same book. Gilliam protested this by burning his WGA card at a book signing event. Well, this act of defiance got back to the Guild, where Gilliam and Grisoni would end up finally getting a writer's credit. Hunter S. Thompson attended one of the movie's test screenings, and the film seemed to be so accurate it caused him to relive his trip, with him jumping up and down on his seat and ducking and diving and yelling out things like, "Shit, look out! Goddamn bats!" Sounds like he was having a heck of a time. Finally, the movie had its premiere at the 1998 Cannes Film Festival, where Gilliam said he'll be disappointed if the movie didn't make waves and outrage people, as he wanted it to be one of the most loved movies of all time, but equally one of the most hated too. Well, be careful what you wish for, as when the movie had its widespread release in May 1998, it was a box office flop, only making $13.7 million on its $18.5 million budget. Yeah, it couldn't recoup its budget, as well as not getting the best reviews. The Washington Post felt like the movie had no story at all, and was more episodic, and that Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas is too grotesque to have any kind of emotional reaction. The Guardian found the movie to be tedious. Roger Ebert would call it a horrible mess of a movie without any trajectory or purpose, and Leonard Maltin called it an excruciating adaptation. Gene Siskel, on the other hand, seemed to have liked it, with him describing the movie, as well as the book, as using Las Vegas as a metaphor for, quote, the worst of America, the extremes of America, the money obsession, and the visual vulgarity of America, end quote. Jeez, it's like he's the only one who got it. So Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas came and went and didn't really make any waves. In fact, here in Australia, it must have gotten a very limited release, because I can remember seeing a preview for the movie on Entertainment Tonight, particularly the scene with all the reptiles in the casino, and I remember thinking, wow, this looks interesting, what's all this about? And yet I waited and waited, and the movie didn't seem to come out. There was no trailers, nothing. Yeah, back in 1998, no one was talking about Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. But history would have other ideas. Number 1, Fear and Legacy. I think when it comes to being a filmmaker, Terry Gilliam is kind of like Stanley Kubrick, in the sense that often his films don't catch on straight away, and can even be initially loathed, but as time goes by, his movies get reassessed and gain a greater appreciation, like they are movies that you have to see a few times in order to get it, rather than movies you can just take at face value the first time you see them. That's not what his movies are designed to do. They're not the kind of films that you just watch the one time, you've got to go back several times. Heck, the very same thing happened to Brazil, which would become Gilliam's golden opus. And so, as time has gone by, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas has gained a wider appreciation, with it becoming a cult movie. Many even consider it to be one of the greatest movies to come out of the 90s. It even entered Empire's list of 500 greatest movies of all time. Yep, this one was a slow burner that people finally caught on to and fully realised in time. In later years, Depp would remain good friends with Hunter S. Thompson. Sadly, in 2005, Thompson would end his own life by way of self-inflicted gunshot wound, where Depp funded his funeral, in which Thompson's ashes were fired out of a cannon. In 2011, Depp would return to play another fictionalized version of Hunter S. Thompson in The Rum Diary, which was also based on one of Thompson's books, kind of making The Rum Diary a spiritual sequel to Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, or be that a prequel. Just like Fear and Loathing, The Rum Diary didn't make any money, but instead actually lost money. But, thus far, it hasn't had the same impact. And while filming The Rum Diary, Johnny Depp met someone who would go on to take a crap on his bed. Allegedly, supposedly, maybe, of course. Regardless, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas is a special movie, a rarity. It's an unhinged, disorientating, grotesque masterpiece, a beautiful canvas of weird. The whole movie feels like you're in a really unhinged, freaky drug trip, and it can often at times even feel uncomfortable and icky, but you can't take your eyes off it. So Gilliam perfectly captures the bizarre world of Hunter S. Thompson's life, and allows us all to experience it. Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas will always stand out as that time Raoul Duke, aka Hunter S. Thompson, took a heap of drugs and went to Las Vegas, but dived into the unknown resources of a mind affected by the excesses of substances and the promise of the American dream. To put it bluntly, he went into bat country. I would say that Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas is definitely an acquired taste. Like, if you went into it expecting a conventional movie, you know, like, say, a Marvel movie or some shit like that, then you are truly in for a rude awakening. The first time I watched this movie, it actually made me feel really icky and uncomfortable. I think what really did it for me was Dr. Gonzo's brown bathwater. I mean, look at that! That shit looks nasty! Yeah, I don't think I really liked the movie the first time I saw it, but it's one of those movies that the more times I see it, the more I love it. The more I'm like, I get it now. Good. I like this. Anyway, I'm Minty, and Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas is too weird to live and too rare to die. That was another tagline. See ya!